Welcome, Doctor. We have arrived at the colony. The police car driver said this sentence to Dr. Nadia, who got off and stood in front of the colony's gate. The Iraq Al-Asab colony. The Iraq Al-Asab colony is essentially a medical hospital. The government established it under the supervision of the psychological medical sector to include the criminals and the accusers whose crimes take on a psychological or behavioral form. She had heard about it from her colleagues in the field, but she had never experienced it. The doctor knocked on the door and introduced herself. She is a psychiatrist and has a patient test today. She passed through the door and was received by a person who took her to the director's office. On the way to the office, she was asked to review the patient's condition based on the file she received from the hospital she worked at yesterday. She stayed up all night. The patient committed 3 murders in 3 different colonies. Between each crime, the second was about 4 days old. He confessed to all the crimes. Investigations found that the 3 victims had nothing to do with the criminal or with each other. It was impossible for a person to commit these crimes on his own. But the investigations proved that he had no accomplices. Most of the accused who come to the colony are crazy enough to get away from the criminal punishment. This patient confessed with a mind of his own and accepted his punishment completely, which is execution. Welcome, Doctor. You enlightened the colonist. Her thoughts were interrupted by the director of the hospital, who noticed that she stayed in his office. He started talking about his condition as long as he was outside the hospital. She understood that she had to write her reports today and that this was one of the easiest clear cases she had. This is Zohan's clear case. A person who hears things and imagines things. The nurse will take you to the case now. It was a happy opportunity. She was in front of the room where the patient was going to be gathered. Nadia entered the room. She saw a tall, muscular young man. His hair and beard were not groomed. He was leaning on a chair in a reversed position. We are leaning on the instructions of the director of the hospital. This was what the nurse said. Nadia sat on the chair in front of her, and there was a distance between her and the patient. She said, or she was about to say, "I am Dr. Nadia, the doctor of..." The patient interrupted her and said, "There is no need for the test, doctor. I confess. I don't have Zohan, illusions, delusions, or the contract of oppression." Dr. Nadia was shocked. "Do you confess that you killed 3 people so easily?" The patient's eyes were closed and he answered, "For not 3. Nadia was shocked. The patient's eyes were closed, but she clearly saw a light in his eyes. A strange, mysterious light. But when she opened his file, she said, "Your name is Amjad Zaiden, 33 years old. You are a swimming coach and you live alone. You don't have a family or a family." "That's right, doctor. All the information is correct, except one information." Nadia looked at him clearly and said, "I am not Amjad. I am from Mabuth, nothing more." Nadia put her whole body on the chair and looked at him with a different look. A real patient's look. "Who are you from? Mabuth? Do you hear someone nodding or talking to you? You don't believe me either, doctor? Okay, I'll prove to you that I'm not Amjad." Suddenly, Amjad's face turned into a terrible horror. His whole body was covered in skulls and he was screaming, "Get him out! Get him out of me! I didn't do anything! I didn't do anything!" Nadia stood up from the chair, and she was in shock despite the distance between them. After a few moments, Amjad calmed down and said, "Do you believe us, doctor? Sit down and do your job." Nadia hesitated, and she couldn't hide her horror. It was the first time she had been so shocked. Her fate was strange, and the strangest thing was his calm acceptance. Usually, when someone claims to be sick, or that there's someone else inside him, he doesn't admit it. From the file, she found out that he killed the 3 victims in a horrible way, completely contradicting the state of surrender he was in. His answer was, "These are not horrible, these are the endings they had put for their victims." Justice says that punishment is a kind of work. Who are you to issue and enforce judgments on people? This is my job, doctor. I enforce the law. Whose law? The law of supreme authority. Nadia was difficult to describe. She was in front of a real madman, a different kind of madman. He had a mix of reality and imagination, and was more sick than mentally ill. Despite this, She couldn't determine many things regarding the execution of the crime in a short time, despite the huge distance between the victims' bodies. Of course, this is an organized crime that has no accomplices and calls on the madman to defend them. Nadia asked him, and his answer was, "I'm not mad, and I don't have any accomplices. How did you end up in 3 prisons in a short time? This is impossible. It's not impossible at all. I can do this. Do you know by your easy confession the result of the report I'm going to write?" "Of course I do, and I'm sure he deserves it." "Who is he?" "Amjad. Are we going to go back to this?" "You're Amjad Zaiden. If you write this report, you'll be sentenced to death." "Yeah, I know he's going to be executed in the end. You're trying to make me think that you're not a single person, but that won't stop me from knowing the truth. The truth is what I told her, and I keep telling her, Doctor. I'm a sniper. I shoot the evil spirits like you shoot the unhealthy plants in the ground. The world has a law. Who gave you this right? The supreme authority. Again, why am I wasting my time with you? I really thought you had a secret, and I was trying to find it out to help you. But it's obvious that you're just a psychopath, nothing more. Okay, Doctor, I'm going to tell you the stories of the 3 victims. Maybe you'll understand, even if I admit that I understand more than you and them. Let me tell you, peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you. I'm Olivert James, and this is Narrator Program, a new episode from the book of Olivert James. Let's continue this crazy story, or who is this sniper? Let's hear the stories of the 3 victims. Let's go. The first victim is the princess and the red horse. In one of the coastal provinces, there was a children's care home. The care home was in charge of the princess for many years. She was a very kind person and a very good servant, whether in her work or in general with people. But there was a flaw that ruined many of her decisions, behaviors, and relationships during the 55 years of her life. This flaw is the loss of nerves. One day, a young girl came in with a beautiful little ribbon, and in her hand, a small red horse. She asked the care home manager to let her go, because she didn't have a family to live with. Her family was there, but they refused to welcome her because the father and mother got married against their will. She was a tough woman, and since she was the faithful friend of the girl's mother, she thought the care home was the best place for her. Especially since she was a flight attendant, she couldn't take good care of the girl. The girl was full of the red horse in her hand, and the care home manager asked her, "What's your name, my love?" She said, "Princess." "What's that in your hand?" "Princess?" She said, "It's my red horse." The care home manager said, "It's beautiful. Can I see it?" The princess joined the horse in a childlike movement and looked at the care home manager. The care home manager understood from the mother's friend that the horse was the princess's last gift, and it was on her birthday before she died. The girl asked the care home manager to let her see the horse. "It's beautiful. But what does this horse mean to you, princess?" The girl replied, "Because my mother told me when you want me, tell the horse to take me to my mother." She said, "And he takes you to your mother?" The girl replied, "I haven't told him yet." The care home manager was very sad, and the girl hit the bell and asked the care home manager to take the princess to the most beautiful place in Anbar. She insisted that no one should take the horse from her. The horse that was left for the girl lost her family, and her parents were sad for her, and she hadn't died for 5 years. The princess spent 7 months in the care home, and her red horse didn't leave her for a moment, even when she was sleeping. Even her mother's friend, who couldn't visit her from the moment she left the care home, didn't think of the princess for a moment, and she didn't feel any sadness around her as long as the red horse was with her. The care home was nominated for a big party in front of the governor of the city, and the care home manager asked the princess to be in the line of the girls for the test. She asked her to stay in the house and choose the rest of the girls. The night before she went back to sleep, she turned the princesses to the children and chose them, and she chose the girl named Amira. The princesses went to the care home manager. "You're the first one I chose for the party, because you're the most beautiful girl in the house." "Thank you, sir." But Amira, there's a very small problem. Look, princess, we can't attend the party while the horse is with us. The princess was nervous. What do you mean, sir? Look, we'll give the horse a short vacation until we practice for the party. And to keep it, we'll keep it in the care home manager's room so that the other girls can take it and hide it while you're not there. Amira held the horse and said, no, not the horse. Keep it with me. The princesses pulled the horse from Amira with sudden violence and told her, no, the horse will stay here, and when we finish the practice and the party, take it. Amira shouted in an unusual way and said, no, I want the horse. I want the horse, not the party. The princesses yelled at her, not in your mood, you idiot. Do you really think it's a horse? It's a piece of wood. Amira shouted, bring the horse back to me. The princesses yelled at Amira, no, take the horse. It's in your information. You won't see the horse again. Amira took the horse and held it, saying, I want my mom. Take me to my mom. She took her armband and said, Mom, if you had a mother, you'd be here. She yelled at her, and Amira fell on her back in the middle of the room. And then the difference of life. She died? Nadia got bored with this word, so she imitated it. Yes, and Gamilat was going to live without punishment all her life. Her manager knew someone who was going to close the whole thing legally and in an orderly way. And that's why she fulfilled my duty and became her princess. Are you punishing a person for a crime she hasn't committed yet? The crime would have been committed if Gamilat had stayed alive. All I did was deprive her of that. And in the same way she was going to kill this child and the child from the punishment. Yes, but Gamilat and others haven't committed these crimes yet. And it was very reasonable for them not to commit them. Amjad replied to her with confidence. If they hadn't committed it, I wouldn't have been isolated from them. The story is about the criminal. Isn't that right, Amjad? Suddenly, Amjad came out of the cold and he was shouting, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. But the real cold was on Nadia's face. The cold that doubled when Amjad returned in the moment of his extreme cold. And he said to her, the funny thing is that if this party had been held, Gamilat would have been the manager of the house after 3 months. Suddenly, Nadia asked him, how did you know? From the high authority. Nadia was amazed by the confidence and calmness he was talking to them. After a period of silence, Nadia tried to gather herself. She asked him about the second crime, the second victim, Tadbir Bader. In a village of Korabari, there was a very simple man named Abdul Hamid. He worked at a flour mill. He had 4 daughters. Many men were afraid that he would have a son, but God didn't want that. The eldest daughter, the most beautiful, the most intelligent, was Wafa. Usually, when a person is named after his firstborn, the whole village was named after his father, Wafa. And this was killing them from the inside. But it didn't bother him at all. Agree or disagree, these are inherited and still exist. Abdul Hamid raised his wife and 4 daughters as much as he could, until their eldest daughter, Wafa, reached the age of 3. One day he came back from the flour mill. His son, Ghafir Alamda, called him. He told him that there was a special message from his father, Ghafir. He told him that Alamda asked for his name in the Alamda Mandar after the Isha prayer. His neighbor, Ibn al-Ghafir, and his son, Abdul Hamid, were all confused. When he got home, he told his wife Al-Ma'idi. His wife was more confused than him. What did Alamda want? He went to Alamda's house. Alamda was waiting for him in the mandar. His welcome to Abdul Hamid was too much. His question about his situation and the situation of his daughters was rare. Alamda said to him, I came with a short message. I called you at night because I wanted to talk to you about an important matter. What is it, Alamda? This is good news and joy. Congratulations to you and your whole family. Abdul Hamid. Honestly, we meant for you. Abdul Hamid was very surprised by the request. Alamda wanted his son's approval in a house that was not successful in the world, but it was successful in breaking the line, accounting, and money. Where will you find better than him? Abdul Hamid replied to him, yes, Alamda, but these issues need to be thought about. I also have to take care of the girl. Alamda replied, what girl do you take care of? You are her father, and I will do what is best for her. Think about the good that will come to your home, Abdul Hamid. Your mother and your daughters will be in my and my son's hands. Go and rest. Tomorrow, as now, we will agree on everything, Abu Nazab. Abdul Hamid was confused for a long time. What does Alamda have in mind? The girl went to the flag and the prophet, and she was one of the first. After all this, he took her to a monastery where he could not write two words to each other. Abu al-Banat arrived at his house and told his wife what happened. His wife was very satisfied even before he continued the story. Despite his wife's enthusiasm for the marriage of Ibn al-Amda, and her firm refusal to prevent it, Abdul Hamid insisted that he consult his wife about the matter. The mother called out to Wafa and told her what happened. Wafa was very surprised how a well-educated woman like her could marry a man like Abdir, even if he was Ibn al-Amda. Her mother did not believe that her daughter was against it. And of course, it is well known that the flag is not good for the house, and the woman is a part of it. But the father was completely silent and waiting for his daughter's opinion, because this is the final opinion. She told him that she did not agree and wanted to continue her flag. Does this mean that this is the last thing you want? She told him that she did not want to see him as a doctor for a long time. She asked him to stay for a few months and take the exam and enter the medical college. People will not say Abu Wafa. They will say that Dr. Wafa left and Dr. Wafa came. Why did you leave the exam after your father's opinion? Indeed, Wafa had the best of her father's hopes. The girl passed the exam and was the first in the province. She was easily admitted to the medical school. People started calling him Dr. Wafa, which made him fly in the sky. I'm sure he was right when he refused his daughter's marriage from his stepson. It's true that he had a lot of difficulties, but in the end, everything calmed down and the girl was admitted to the medical school. Things went on peacefully for months, but there was one person who couldn't forget and was determined to take revenge. This person was Bader. Bader, although he was generally considered a good person, he had a very serious flaw when he was young. His mother, Lee, was the only son of 3 daughters. He hated it when people said no to him. He hated rejection. The idea that what he wanted was not to be done was turning another person 180 degrees. This is what happened when Abd al-Hamid's house rejected the match between Dar al-Amda and Ibn al-Amda. At the bus station on the first street of the village, and in front of his father's old driver, who takes the bus from the first line every time, he was still driving with another driver and he added water just in case. After a while, the driver agreed to stop the bus. The bus stopped, but the bus didn't reach the next station. It didn't reach at all. What happened next? Nadia was very curious, so she asked Amjad, and he told her that the bus drowned in the sea as a result of being turned away from the road, and Dr. Wafa drowned. How did the bus get out of its way? What does this happen at this time? This is not a show, doctor. This is a plan. He put a drug for the driver in the bag he gave him, and because he knew the time of Wafa's arrival, and he knew that she would be alone on the road, he targeted her. Do you know what is one of fate's paradoxes? It is that Wafa promised her father that she would get married in Dare, on the condition that he would let her continue her education. Now, they are a perfect couple. Nadia replied, if he had left her, she would have come back this time. It was a part of his fate, and he would get married after 2 years, and he would leave her as well. But with his management, he ruined everything, and he would lose the punishment because most of the driver's blood is not clean, and there was no one to blame in Dare, and Wafa used to cry every day on the sea asking for justice. Nadia's appearance was at its end. When she asked him, how did you know all this? He answered her calmly, from the highest authority. In fact, despite her experience and her many studies in this field, Nadia was unable to determine Amjad's condition. Is he crazy? Psychopathic? Loyal? Murderer? Do you want fame? It was a very strange mix, and his insistence on clarifying things in detail shows that he is behind something. Even if he is a person who has extraordinary abilities, or even earned them after that, it is not logical to use them in evil. Even if we assume that he will use them in evil, he should use them with people who have a circle of relationships with him, not people who he does not know anything about and who tell himself as well. A sound logic, but you still can't understand that Amjad is one thing and I am another. A question, since you have all these abilities, and they are given to you by the highest authority, why didn't you try to prevent Bader from giving more to the driver? or that Amira should not be at the governor's party. Because death is a point that no one can change, even if he has the ability to return in time. Because at this point, the dominant factor can always win in the end, no matter what the circumstances. Yes, but you prevented the death of Amira because she is loyal and the third person for sure. Didn't you break the dominant factor? Amjad replied quickly and said, no one can prevent death because it is a past effect on creatures. They deserve it no matter how long they live. All I did was to replace a soul with a soul, but the dominant factor was not affected. Despite her specialization in popular medicine, she could not understand his logic or his ideas. It is impossible for him to be such a great actor, and it is also impossible for him to be just crazy. Of course, there is something incomprehensible. Nadia asked him, what about the third crime? The third victim? He said, Ibrahim Eid, the miracle of algebra and engineering. He is a great genius. He was transferred to one of Al-Said's schools because there was someone who looked like him, and he was a liar. He said that he is a hardworking person, and his wife loves him. She traveled with him to Al-Said, and he stayed in a small apartment provided by the Ministry for Immigrants. In a short time, Ibrahim Eid earned a good reputation among students and teachers. He was very busy. In the class, he explained to the students, listened to them, and taught them new activities. Sometimes he stayed after the school day. All of this, for his classmates, is acceptable. However, there is a point that ignited the conflict between Ibrahim and his colleagues. He does not give lessons outside the school. With his simple explanation, and the high level of the students, the school offered him to give school groups after the school day to the students who are not capable. Of course, Ibrahim welcomed this. As a result, a lot of students were transferred from the private lessons of his colleagues to the school group. What made him win among them, and because hate is one thing and harm is another, there was only one person who was determined to keep him away from the school. This person was teacher Mahmoud Al-Dashan. Since Mahmoud was number one in the subject before Ibrahim, he was the most harmful in his style, which attracted most students from him. Mahmoud complained to his wife about his colleague, so she suggested to make him a kite from the school. However, this was difficult because Ibrahim left himself in the school. The students and the school administration did not trust him. Mahmoud's wife said to him to make him a magician. He said to her, his wife understood that she was an experienced teacher and she wanted to go to a magician. She said to him it would be better not to lose the tuition fee. This is the money that opened the house. Mahmoud remained silent as if he was thinking, or as if there was a conflict inside him. Is it possible that Mahmoud Al-Dashan, the teacher who appreciates science, would go to a magician to solve his problem? What is the problem? Is the number of lessons less? What does this mean? Is it possible that someone like Ibrahim would cut the tuition fee of his students? As there is no other solution, this is the reason. Mahmoud agreed. His wife asked him to get something from his colleague's train to use it in his work. As soon as he arrives, he will be ready to go to the teacher. The next day, Mahmoud went to school and was very close to Ibrahim, who was surprised by the change in his behavior. But his good spirit made him happy that his colleague was good to him. Mahmoud invited Ibrahim for breakfast and he was very happy with him. As usual, Mahmoud asked Ibrahim to light his cigarette. While Ibrahim was working on the day of the lesson, Mahmoud took his cigarette and ran to the house. His wife was waiting for him. Indeed, Mahmoud went to the teacher. She was sitting on the roof in a dark neighborhood that was not even on the map. It was a dark place. Mahmoud was so calm that he blamed himself for hearing his wife's words. But he couldn't take it anymore. He reached the door. Mahmoud knocked on the door and went inside. He found an old woman wearing a black dress and a place with a lot of smoke. There was only a small yellow light in the middle of the room. Mahmoud sat down and told her the whole story and asked for a solution. She looked at Mahmoud with a lot of smoke. She said to him, "My ears are ringing." She said to him, "Don't take it. Stop your earring. See how it is going to be changed. A small one can change a big one." Mahmoud felt embarrassed and didn't have a solution. She switched on Ibrahim and started to work. He came home and told his wife that he believed what was told and the days are well shown. The next day, Mahmoud left the school and apologized to Ibrahim. Ibrahim gave him the lighter, but Ibrahim, like any smoker, acted on his own. And with a strange design for Ibrahim, Mahmoud decided to give him the lighter and take the new one. What happened after that was beyond imagination. Don't tell me that the work was a success. Nadia said this question to Amjad, who responded to her and said to her, "Excellent." Ibrahim turned his back on himself and became unable to work. He went to many doctors and no one was able to diagnose what he had because he was a healthy organ. This, of course, made the school group stop and the students returned to private lessons. Mahmoud was the biggest beneficiary. What was Ibrahim's fate? With the psychological pressure and anger that suddenly happened, he went crazy and committed suicide. Suicide? Yes. He thought he would rest in peace. The strangest thing is that if Mahmoud had left Ibrahim alone for another week, he would have received a large sum of money to fix his situation. How? In the school group, the boy was not able to fully understand the information and was very upset. The boy complained to his father that he could not concentrate in the group. His father went to the best teacher in the school after Ibrahim, Mahmoud, to ask him to give his son a private lesson alone at a double price. At the same time, there were other students who had the same problem. They were asking for the same amount of money. Mahmoud was going to get more than what he was getting. In a private lesson, there were 3 or 4 students. If anyone had promised Nadia that one day she would have a situation like Amjad, she would not have believed him. Nadia was in a very routine work assignment, a class that was easy and simple according to the instructions. But now she is immersed in her thoughts and questions, and she is in a rare situation when she passes by someone. Did you kill Jamalat because she was going to kill the princess? Did you kill Dara because he was going to die? Did you kill Mahmoud because he was going to kill Ibrahim? Yes. How can you kill people and control their lives in this ugly way without evidence? Ugly? I reduced them. How did you reduce them? I turned them from criminals to victims. What is your proof that they were going to be criminals? I told you everything. Do you have a material evidence? Everything you said and did is not a material evidence. The money that you did not tell anyone else is not a material evidence. I do not believe all this. There is a big mistake in your story. You say that you turned the criminals to victims. Supposedly, this is true. Supposedly, you are not Amjad. You turned Amjad to a criminal and made him a murderer. This destroys everything you say. Amjad smiled and said in a cold voice, "Amjad is not a murderer? Speak, Amjad." As usual, Amjad turned from the cold voice to the loud voice. He is angry. You did not kill him. You did not kill him. But this time, the evidence was in its place. Even with Amjad's return to the cold voice, she decided to resort to another method. Who did Amjad kill? He did not kill anyone. He killed a colleague just to get his job in a business trip. What does this mean? Does this mean that he tried to kill his colleague to get his job? Sometimes he sends someone to fight with him to injure him. Sometimes he puts a strong drug on him to drown in the pool while he practices alone, until he gets to the point of planting doubts between him and his wife, so that he can use his brain and spend the trip on him. And all of this got his colleague out of focus and he lost the chance to cross the road on the contrary. Every time Nadia said, "Really?" Yes, and it was impossible to get away from the punishment, and it was necessary at that time to intervene him, of course. You mean the high authority that you sent exactly? And suddenly Nadia got up from her place with courage and went to Amjad to someone, and she looked him in the eye and said to him, "It's a big loss that a talented person in composing and acting like you to be like him. You would have been in big trouble. Even the fame you got as a result of your lie you won't be able to get back." She understood his game. He's crazy. He wants fame. He collected information about the crimes and invented all this story just to get famous. History is full of crazy people like him. I will write the report that he's not a criminal. He's just a crazy person who can do anything so that he won't feel that he's hated and become famous even by killing. Do you think this is the end, Doctor? Of course, even if I wish to see you crazy because your life is what you want to look at, I promise you that you will see this moment. Nadia suddenly smiled and said to him, "Oh, the resurrected psychiatrist is not one of those who are ready to execute the execution. This is a law. Even your high authority can't change it." Amjad was smiling and smiling. She couldn't define it exactly, but people made fun of her. Nadia left the room and the building after spending a hard day and a difficult case to forget. Nadia wrote the report, but the law is a paper and confession is the master of evidences. Amjad was sentenced to death. Even though it affected her, Nadia's professional and life responsibilities made her not follow Amjad's news regularly, and on a normal day she was ready to go to work. but she got a call from the hospital manager. Good morning, Mr. Manager. What's the matter, Mr. Manager? Nadia's silence was surprising. She didn't hear the manager, and he was calling her name. Yes, sir. But according to the law, I'm not supposed to watch something like this. This has never happened. Yes, sir. I can't watch this. Who are you, sir? The manager answered and said the word that shook Nadia's body. The high authority. Nadia, who is the high authority? Get the car ready. The manager stopped and left Nadia alone. Could it be? Could it be a coincidence? Impossible. This is a clear exception, as if it's detailed to be watched on the way to the execution. Nadia's questions were increasing rapidly. Nadia arrived at the execution place and saw Amjad in a scene not much different from the old Arabian movies, a man screaming and swearing that he's innocent, and the execution phase came. Do you want to say something before you die? Amjad didn't say anything, but his face suddenly turned into a smile, and he turned towards Nadia, whose heartbeats were clearly audible to everyone. And it's the same smile. The smile stayed on Amjad's face until they covered him with the famous black cover, and the execution was carried out. Nadia's questions had no limits, and also no answer to keep this mysterious state in her mind for the rest of her life. Not Amjad's case, by the way, but the case of Al-Mabus, Al-Sulta, Al-Yulia. And that's it. I hope you liked the story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you're not subscribed, hit the bell button to receive all new. And that's it. See you in the next episode. Good night.